Dear students, I welcome you to this lecture on the European Union. In this lecture, we will learn about three important values of the European Union. Subsidiarity is the first, solidarity is the second, and deeper integration is the third value. First, I will describe what we mean by these values. So what are the basis of these values in the European treaties? Second, I will analyze in which way and to what degree these values are realized in the European Union. And third, I will make proposals how we could succeed in furthering the impact of these values. So our first value is subsidiarity. What do we mean by subsidiarity? This is in the Treaty of the European Union in Article 5. It says that the Union shall act only if and insofar as the objectives of the proposed action cannot be sufficiently achieved by the member states, either at central level or at regional level or at local level. And only in these cases, the European Union will become active. Besides this article in the Treaty of the European Union, we also have a protocol to the Treaty of Lisbon. And in this protocol, it is a protocol on the application of the principles of subsidiarity and proportionality. In this protocol, we are establishing an early warning system for national parliaments. Of course, this has to do with subsidiarity. We have national parliaments and we have a European level. And insofar as national parliaments get more influence in all these areas where they should be active, this would be fulfilling the principle of subsidiarity. And this is why we have this new protocol since the Treaty of Lisbon. And what does this protocol say? This protocol says, well, there is now a procedure that national parliaments can participate on the European level. Now let's say the European Commission makes a proposal for a legislative act. And now a national parliament thinks, oh no, this subject should be dealt with at the national level or the regional level or the local level. And in this case, a national parliament can send a letter, an opinion to the European Commission and say, well, stop. This is against the principle of subsidiarity. And if there are a third of all national parliaments in the European Union saying this, that they say we complain, you do not sort of apply the principle of subsidiarity, in this case then the European Commission has to look again to this proposal and probably alter it, change this proposal. However, after the review of, after the Commission has looked at the proposal again, the Commission is free to say, oh, we will go on with this proposal, or we will change it, or we will stop with this proposal. So actually, parliaments do not have such a big influence. So this is what we call this early warning system for national parliaments with regard to the principle of subsidiarity. We come to our next important value of the European Union, which is solidarity. We find the basis in the treaties here in the Treaty of the European Union in Article 3. And this article reads, the Union shall promote economic, social and territorial cohesion and solidarity among member states. But well, what can solidarity mean in a union of 28 member states with very different cultures and very different traditions and systems of welfare states, and of course with huge differences in economic capabilities? What can this mean? So the best is to look what does the European Union, according to the treaties, plan once we have a critical situation. So this is why we should look at the principle of solidarity with regard to the Eurozone crisis. What do the treaties tell us with regard to solidarity in such a situation? And here we will not find very much in the European treaties. We only will find the Article 125 now in the Treaty of Functioning of the European Union. And here the treaties say, well, the Union shall not be liable for or assume the commitments of central governments, regional, local or other public authorities, other bodies governed by public law. This simply means in case that any member state of the Eurozone has trouble and has huge public debts, the treaties say, well, we are not going to help you. So we can see that solidarity in financial affairs and in a critical situation is very limited according to the treaties. We come now to our third important value of the European Union, which is deeper integration. You find in the treaties, in Article 1, Treaty of European Union, that this treaty says, well, this treaty marks a new stage in the process of creating an ever closer union among the peoples of Europe, in which decisions are taken as openly as possible and as closely as possible to the citizen. So, of course, this is very general, if we have such an article on deeper integration. And I will concentrate here in this lecture, with regard to this value, on the question, what does it mean to have an ever closer integration as closely as possible to the citizen? Such a formulation, of course, can be interpreted as a very paternalistic understanding of democracy when it says, well, decisions as closely as we can to the citizens. This seems very much like somebody is telling us what to do as citizens. However, this value can also be interpreted in a more active way, in which the peoples of the European Union are the sovereign of political power, the source of political power, and also the point of reference for political power. Well, if we imagine on a European level, this is of course very difficult to realize. If we say democratic legitimacy means, and now I am citing Robert Post from his new book, Democracy, Expertise and Academic Freedom, which has appeared in 2012. He says, democratic legitimacy means, I'm citing, that those who are subject to law should also experience themselves as the authors of law. So the important word in this sentence, which makes it a little bit different from many definitions of democracy, that the citizens should not just have the possibility to vote or to take part in a referendum, but to experience that they are part of the political system and experience that in the end they are the authors of law. So far, we have looked now at the treaty basis of our three values: subsidiarity, solidarity, and deeper integration. In the next step of this lecture, we will look in which way these values are realized. First, the reality of subsidiarity. We have seen that this value is expressed by this protocol on subsidiarity with regard to national parliaments and with regard to the new chances they have since the Treaty of Lisbon. However, this early warning system has shortcomings. National parliaments do not really have participatory power. They can only initiate the review of a proposal of the Commission, and then the Commission can decide. National parliaments do not have a veto to stop legislation if, in their view, this proposal violates the principle of subsidiarity. So I would say, in reality, this protocol on subsidiarity is not very effective. If we look in the reality of subsidiarity, now when we look what has happened during the Eurozone crisis, we see that the influence of national parliaments has been decreasing and the influence of executive power has been increasing. So if we would make a sum, in the end, one cannot say that national parliaments have gained very much in power with this protocol. The only thing parliaments can do now with all the measures with the management of Eurozone crisis is ratifying the treaties. For example, the European Stability Mechanism, then the national parliaments have to ratify, but they get these texts very late. They have no expertise really about these treaties. So one would say in the end, really they ratify it, but they do not really influence these treaties. Now we come, let me first go back to this, to our second principle, the reality of solidarity. Here we have seen that we have a very small basis in the European treaties for concrete solidarity in a critical situation like the Eurozone crisis. We have read this article where we would see, so they are not liable if member states have huge debts. So now this is why the treaties in the meantime have been revised in order to make it possible to establish help for member states in distress, in crisis, like for example Greece or Italy or Portugal. And they have changed the European treaties to make it possible to have something like a European stability mechanism. Yet, does this really help if we look to the reality? We have already now these measures since 2010, and can we really say that solidarity has been realized? The main problem of the monetary union are the huge differences in economic capacities between the member states of the Eurozone. A single currency on the condition of these differences and without having a common fiscal or economic possibility has been a risk from the start. This challenge could have been answered by solidarity. However, in the course of the crisis, the spread between the well-to-do countries and the distressed countries has increased. So the measures taken when we look to reality did not realize really in solidarity. We can look to different indicators. We can look to trade imbalances within the Eurozone, which have increased since 1999. We can look to the GDP, the gross domestic product per capita between the member states of the Eurozone, and then we have member states with a very high GDP and the distressed member states with a very low. I have here chosen to take the indicator of unemployment. And here you see with this blue line, a rich state of the Eurozone, Germany. And there you can say, and there you can see when there was the international financial crisis in 2008, it was already stabilizing, and then with the Eurozone crisis, unemployment in Germany went down. While the red line, if you look at this now, the unemployment in the distressed states, which are Greece, Italy, Ireland, Portugal, and Spain, these 5 states, they say gypsy states, but I don't like the term because I think it's somehow not a right term for countries. So these states, you can see since 2008, unemployment is rising. I have the same graph if you compare it with Luxembourg. Luxembourg also is a very rich member state of the Eurozone, and here you see basically the same trend. So management of the crisis so far has relied on financial help for distressed countries, combined with strict conditionality to reduce public debts. This meant in the end that Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal had austerity policies. They must realize austerity policies, and of course here we can see the results that unemployment is going up. One could interpret this financial help, nevertheless, with this European stability mechanism as an example for real solidarity between member states of the Eurozone. I don't think that this is true. In my view, it is a misunderstanding of solidarity to transfer money under strict conditionality between members of the Eurozone. An indicator that this method has not worked and is a misunderstanding of solidarity can be seen in the mistrust that has developed between the states who give money and the states who receive money. So now I'm citing an author, Miguel Maduro. He is an eminent legal scholar and he is now also in the government, or in the Portuguese government. Miguel Maduro writes, and I would say he is right with this citation. Some believe they are paying for the mistakes and cheating of others. The latter believe that the former have not shown sufficiently solidarity and are instead imposing a form of collective punishment. These discourses are, moreover, increasingly shaped around national and ethnic lines. End of citation. So this is what has happened. It has not happened that we have a situation where these countries who are in a bad situation feel that there is a lot of solidarity. We have mistrust, we have well-to-do countries, and they say, well, they should work more, why should we help them? And the poor countries say, well, austerity policy is not very good for us. Having described now the values of subsidiarity, solidarity, and deeper integration, and analyzed the insufficient realization of these values in the European Union, I will now make two proposals in which, in combination, we could further the impact of these values. Because I did not go into depth with deeper integration, of course we know all this has to do with the democratic deficit of the European Union, and here we know that we have in the reality really many deficits of democracy. We have a European Parliament which does not have the initiative for legislation. We have elections to the European Parliament with which we do not elect a government but just the Parliament. So I have not gone into depth with this value in the reality, but you will see we come back now with our two proposals. So I will make two proposals, and if both would be realized, I think there would be a chance that these three values, subsidiarity, solidarity, and deeper democratic integration, could be realized more. The first proposal would enhance the influence of the peoples on who will be the president of the European government, the Commission. This proposal has been made first by the political scientist Simon Hicks, and at the moment it is discussed if next year we will have elections to the European Parliament, if this proposal will put into reality for the first time. Still, there are some governments who say, well, we do not yet like to practice it, but we will see. And here is the proposal. First, I show you on this graph how this is in the moment. When we, the peoples, and represented by political parties, elect the European Parliament, we elect the European Parliament, we don't elect the European Commission. Down here, you have the European Council, and independent now from the European Parliament, the European Council, with a qualified majority, can say, this is our candidate for President of the Commission. And then this president says, well, these are my commissioners, this is my government. Then they go to the European Parliament and there are hearings, and in the end the European Parliament cannot choose. It says yes or no. It also cannot say we don't want this commissioner or this. It has to say we take the whole package of the commission or we don't take it. So this is the situation at the moment where you see when you vote for the European Parliament, you don't elect a government. Now here is this proposal that Simon Hicks was the first to make, and it has been developed and discussed a lot since he first made this proposal in 2008. Now this proposal would mean we elect now the European Parliament. And the political parties who have candidates for this election next year would say, our candidate for President of the Commission is Mrs. X or Mr. Y, and if this party then is successful and gets a majority in the Parliament, then the proposal says, well, then the European Council, he cannot but take this candidate for President of the Commission. Though this is not set in the treaties like this, there is no other way. If they had made campaigns, electoral campaigns, and have said, well, this is our candidate and this party will win, then it will be just a logical development that they would say, well, then this, the European Council would say, this is now also our candidate for President of the Commission. So you see now, there is an important connection now with the Parliament and the European Council. And you see also between the President of the Commission and the European Parliament, there is an interconnection. It is not just going top down, but there is an interconnection. And I think this is a very good proposal for more democratic, deeper integration. We said we don't just want deeper integration and more competences, but we want more competences with more democratic legitimacy, and people should experience that they are the authors of law, but they cannot do this if they don't elect their own parliament. So, in addition, the second proposal now tries to combine this also with our other important value, with solidarity. This second proposal would make it possible to respect subsidiarity on the one hand and at the same time have a deeper democratic integration and more solidarity in the European Union. What is the idea of this proposal? Again, this proposal is made by an author I have already cited, by Miguel Maduro. He is really an expert of European integration, and he gives us I'm sorry, this is now, we just put this here. Miguel Maduro proposes the following idea. He wants that the budget of the European Union is effectively enlarged. So far, only 1% of the GDP of the EU is the budget of the European Union. And Miguel Maduro says we need that this European Union has their own resources and does not have just sort of giving and taking from the rich to the poor, and the one saying, well, we have to give for you, and the other saying, now we are punished and have to make austerity policies. But it would mean that these own resources for the European Union, which should be enlarged from 1% to 3% of GDP of the European Union, that these resources are linked to the economic wealth of the European Union. So he argues that he says, well, we have the single market. And there are certain actors who profit especially from the single market, for example, banks. And if we now have a financial transaction tax, and we take part of this financial transaction tax as a European source, these people who profit from the European Union give back something to the European Union. And then we have much more European resources. And with these resources, now, it's not mistrust, because that's the common sort of budget of the European Union. One can say we make this policy, but also one can have a stabilization fund. This is now very different from what we have now, the European Stability Mechanism. With all its conditionality, we would have a fund and say, when member states are in distress, we give from this fund, and every member state knows in advance how much of its taxes this member state would give to this common budget of the European Union. So also subsidiarity is more realized, because everybody knows in advance, this will be my part, the part I have to pay, but then it's finished. Then it's not all again and saying now more and this is not enough and so on. So it's much more subsidiarity and also more solidarity, because if Greece then wants some money from this fund, it must not ask a troika or other executives if this is allowed. Of course, I'm sorry. There is some missing here. No, I have it. Excuse me, please. The two proposals together would make it possible to respect now subsidiarity and at the same time realize more solidarity in a more democratic union. This might, of course, if you look at this proposal of Miguel Maduro, sound utopian. But I think without a demanding goal, there will always be only incremental change and no clear direction of where we go in the European Union. Having such a proposal on the table, however, we can discuss it in the public spheres. And I think at least we have a direction, even if you don't realize it in a short time. I want to close when we look at this proposal, which is really challenging and to some might sound utopian. Hannah Arendt, she has said, I'm citing, "We must take the initiative for something new, engage in shaping our own history, and take the risk to discuss this in the public spheres." I think this is a real, I think what Hannah Arendt is saying would be what we need in the European Union, not just incremental change and not just all this mistrust in the Eurozone crisis, but saying, let us take the initiative for something new, let us have our own budget from all the wealth of the European Union, give it to the member states who need it, and also to not only have this more solidarity, but also discuss this in the public and make people of the European Union experience also more democracy and deeper integration. Thank you very much.